Welcome to our latest one-on-one webcast. I'm Andrew J. Harris III.
And I'm Brian Dudiak. Today we are going to discuss the teams that just missed October baseball. Andy, teams like the Braves, Marlins, Giants, Rangers, and Tigers, they just missed the postseason. Which of these teams have the brightest future, and at the same time, which of these teams have the bleakest future?
In terms of brightest, I like the Atlanta Braves. They have a rotation that even this year was loaded. And then they're adding Tim Hudson, who, is recovering from Tommy John surgery. On top of that, they only got about half a year from Tommy Hanson. They'll have him for an entire year next year. That's a huge boost, an already stacked rotation. They're also going to be calling up Jason Hayward. He's still young. He's not going to be, the prodigy that everyone thinks he is, by the end of 2010. He'll be that someday. But he's still an improvement over the terrible players they had in the outfield for the majority of the year. You can't deny that.
Definitely, and they improved their outfield. I think Francoeur clearly wasn't going to do it in Atlanta. They needed a nice swap, and Church was a nice swap for him. Regardless of how he performed during the past year, it was a nice swap that the Mets and Braves made, and hopefully Church can turn it around. But they've had guys like Diaz step up and have decent years, so they can throw him in. Nate McLouth was a nice addition, former Pittsburgh Pirate. And
had to mention that.
Yeah, I had to. But, losing potentially if they don't re-sign him, which I doubt they will, Garrett Anderson is not that big of a deal. Didn't do much this year. And we talked about it before the show. Adam LaRoche, free agent first baseman, I think they will re-sign him because he loves it there. They love having him there. And so he'll probably get re-signed. And so their lineup is going to pretty much stay intact, trying to figure out that little bit of outfield problems. And you nailed it on the rotation. Derek Lowe, Vasquez, Jair Jurgens, Tommy Hanson, even Kawakami had a nice year this year, along with Tim Hudson. Their rotation is stacked. The only thing I'm worried about if I'm a Braves fan is losing. Mike Gonzalez wasn't a strong closer, but he was a presence in that bullpen, another former Pittsburgh Pirate. And then Rafael Soriano is the other one they're losing. So they're losing two key guys that were in their bullpen. And bullpen commodities are everybody's looking for them. So they're going to have to find a way to replace those guys, whether that's putting Kawakami into a bullpen role or something like that. We'll see.
Well, he's their sixth starter.
Exactly.
So, they have that luxury.
So they've got the options, but the only thing that you can knock against the Braves, the Mets are going to be back next year. The Phillies will always be there. The Marlins are going to be there every year, and I'm going to talk about them in a second. But that's the only thing that I think is their tough spot, is they're in a tough division. But they have the keys next year to make a run for it. Switching to the Marlins, looking over their team, they're going to be there every year. Are they going to have a presence? No. But they're going to be there. They always have been. They're going to be there.
They have the best 1-2 punch in the division. Josh Johnson, Ricky Nolasco. Nolasco's going to have a bounce-back year.
Definitely.
He's going to be dominant.
They've got a lot of strong – Volstad's a strong young pitcher as well. They've got strong young players. But for me to sit here and say they just missed it this year, they're going to be there next year, I'm not going to say that. I do believe that the Atlanta Braves are going to be there next year. I think they've got a strong team. But the Marlins, they're too spotty, and a little bit here, a little bit there. They find a way to get it done, but they'll be there every year, but I don't think there'll be much there.
Now, there's always an opposite end to the spectrum. Which current playoff teams do you think miss the playoffs next year?
Current playoff teams? I got to bash the Rockies again. I don't think that I can't believe they made it this year. Their pitching was a surprise this year. Some of them, blanking on Ubaldo Jimenez, he's a real deal. He's definitely going to be around. De La Rosa is a good young pitcher as well. But when you're looking at Aaron Cook and Jason Marquis doing some of what they did this year, you can't expect that to happen next year. It's just
they had big years, but they can't repeat that, especially in Colorado.
Yeah.
With that soft air up there. Come on.
And then the other team I'd say, and it is really ironic, and I talked to you about this before as well. The Rockies, they traded Matt Holliday, and he went on to two different teams, and yet the Rockies still made the playoffs and were actually in the playoffs later than the Cardinals, who ended up with Holliday. Now the Cardinals are going to lose Holliday. They're still going to have their great pitching, but they lose potentially if they don't re-sign him, which we'll see what happens. But they lose a huge presence in that lineup. They've got some other good guys around there, but they're losing Ankiel as well. They're losing.
They might also
some
be
players.
Losing Joel Pinheiro, their number 3 starter.
They've got a lot of guys that they could be losing. So they're another team that you got to wonder And it makes me look at the Central Division and think, holy cow, if any one of the teams in the East, with the exception of the Nationals, were in the Central, they'd have it wrapped up already.
It's a pretty weak division.
I'd say the Rockies and the Cardinals are definitely the two that I'm worried about. Out of those two, I think the Cardinals have the best chance of getting back, but of those two, I think it's also a little bit shady. The only reason I think the Cardinals may make it is because of that weak division.
I'll be interested to see what the Dodgers do if Manny doesn't pick up his option.
True.
Because it's a player option. He probably will, because he'll probably make more money picking up the option, but you never know with Manny, especially with Boras as his agent. I mean, he might think he can get, $30 million when he really won't. So it'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, and they also have a lot of guys, though, this season. They could have fielded 9 guys with their bench that would have been a decent starting lineup. Decent.
Would have been better than the Nationals.
Yes, I mean, you're talking second base, a lot of depth, all over the infield. And so, depending on how they can, some of those guys, they play there for 1 year, they like it, they want to come back. Depending on how they work that out, they should be still good to go. A lot of young pitching coming up, so they should be good to go. The Giants, however, getting back to these teams that just missed, they've got the pitching hands down. We know that. They've got Bumgarner coming up.
I was about to say, yeah.
With Lincecum and Kane and Zito, who was back this year. He looked fantastic for the most part this year. Don't forget about Jonathan Sanchez. He's there as well. So the only question that they have going up against the Dodgers would be the offense.
Can they get it back?
They've got Freddie Sanchez, who they've got a club option on, but they're probably not going to exercise it. They may work out another deal. But they're losing Freddie, they're losing Randy Wynn, and they're losing Benji Molina. Those are 3 veterans that
and those are
they're not all-stars, but they are. They were just that, with the exception of Pablo Sandoval. They were pretty much the guys they were relying on. So how they restructure that offense is going to determine what they do and whether or not they'll definitely be able to compete with the Dodgers. Anybody with those 3-4 pitchers can compete with anybody. But clearly this year, that pitching wasn't able to do it all for them, and they need to figure out some offense to be able to take down the Dodgers next year.
And there are some big bats on the free agent market, so
Definitely.
It'll be interesting to see if they could pick one up.
Definitely. Well, thank you for joining us, and don't forget to check out our other webcast if you haven't already, where Andy and I discuss the MLB playoffs. Thanks for watching, and for the Redheaded Wonder, I'm Brian Dudiak. Whose side are you on?